Welcome everyone to the Friday edition of our Packers News live chat alongside Tom Silverstein. I am Olivia Reiner. The Packers hit the practice field for the final time this week, gearing up for the NFC Championship game on Sunday against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. We'll take some of your questions over on YouTube shortly, or also on Facebook and Periscope too. So if you have whatever thoughts you have down there, we want to hear you. We'll get to some of your questions toward the end of our conversation today. However, before we get into that, first we're going to talk a little bit about the final injury report. Plus, we're also going to look at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers offense. Let's start with that injury report. A notable player was not present at today's practice. Cornerback Kevin King is dealing with a back injury that popped up late in the week. He did not practice, and head coach Matt LaFleur said that they're going to give him tomorrow and the hours leading up to Sunday's game to give him some time to heal before making a decision on whether or not he will be active against the Buccaneers. How concerned should the Packers be about King's absence in practice today?
Well, a lot of times that's just back spasms. The guy's back tightens up and they just need to work on it and loosen it up and, send them to the chiropractor and all of that kind of stuff. Whether it's anything worse than that, it doesn't seem like it. Corey Linsley is a guy who consistently has back issues, and he'll miss a couple days and they work on him and he's ready to go. So I would be surprised if Kevin King wasn't there. It does, raise some flags that they had signed Tramon Williams, maybe knowing a little bit, although he didn't show up on the report until today. So maybe it's just coincidence. I do think that was smart. It turns out that'll be pretty smart if King can't play, but I'd be really surprised if he wasn't there.
Taking a look over at the Buccaneers side, defensive tackle Vita Vea has officially been activated from injured reserve and is eligible and available to play against the Packers in the NFC Championship game. Vea was having one heck of a season before he got injured Week 5 against the Chicago Bears. He fractured his ankle in a span of 5 games at the start of the season. Vea had 2 sacks, 3 quarterback hits, and 10 tackles. How are the Packers going to have to adjust their game plan to account for Vea on the field if he is healthy enough to go?
Yeah, that is something they're going to have to consider. I don't know how effective he's going to be first game back. He certainly won't be the player that he was when he got hurt, but just by his size, he'll be a guy they'll need to move around. I think where it kind of becomes a factor is how do they approach game planning against the Buccaneers? Do they spread him out and make him go to nickel and take Vita Vea off the field because he's not really a nickel pass rusher? Or do they just run their normal offense and count on their interior guys, Linsley and Alton Jenkins and Patrick, to be able to handle Vea and Sue? But as I said, I don't know that he's going to play more than 20 snaps. If he does, hey, I'm wrong. But I just have a feel he'll be a situational player.
The Buccaneers are looking pretty healthy except for one player. Wide receiver Antonio Brown has been ruled out for this Sunday's NFC Championship game as he's been dealing with a knee injury this past week. Yeah. The Bucs still have plenty of firepower on offense in their receiving core in wide receivers Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. Evans is 4th in the league during the regular season with 13 touchdowns. How will the Bucs receiving core kind of hold it together without Brown?
Well, it's not like they were relying on him like he was their number one receiver. I think he was starting to come along, add an element of versatility to what they could do on offense. I think they let him run the ball once against Washington, and their number one receiver is still Mike Evans. That's their number one target, and I would not hesitate to say Godwin is number 2, and Bray is right in there as well. I don't think it's a huge loss for them. I think they've been playing all year without him before he showed up, and I don't think it's like something that'll cause them to lose the game.
Looking back to that Week 6 game between the Packers and the Buccaneers, quarterback Tom Brady didn't exactly have his most spectacular game of his career. He had 17 completions for 166 yards and 2 touchdowns. However, Brady did not get hurried in the pocket once. The Packers' pass rush couldn't really get through to him. How can the Packers improve and sustain some more pressure on Brady this time around?
Well, I really think, the time they played him, Kenny Clark was back for first game from a groin injury, and he was not himself. It took him several games to get back to where he should be. Their inside linebackers, I believe they started Chris Barnes and Ty Summers. And so, Barnes was really in the infancy of his career, and Summers is now a special teams guy. So I think there's going to be some opportunity for Christian Kirksey, for Kamal Martin, for them to do some blitzing up the middle. I think we'll see a lot of pressure. I think it'll be a lot of combination of Pettin bringing guys from a certain direction, but it's all about funneling it to the middle, trying to get a hand in Brady's face, trying to get him to feel a little bit of heat up the middle.
What questions do you have out there about the Packers' defensive game plan, offensive game plan? We want to hear it down in the chat right now. Let's head over to Facebook, Periscope, and YouTube for some of your questions. Thanks so much, everyone, for joining us. Let's head over to Periscope first. Cheesehead wants to know, do you think cornerback Tramon Williams will play since King won't be a possibility? If Kevin King isn't healthy enough to play, and we know exactly what the Packers decided to do during the regular season when King wasn't healthy enough to play. King dealt with a quadriceps injury for 5 games, kept him out, and cornerback Josh Jackson started in his place. If King is not healthy enough to play on Sunday, who are they most likely to lean on? Jackson, Tramon Williams, someone else, if King can't go?
I think Chandon Sullivan would be the starter over there. I think they would move him in their base, but more than likely they're going to play a lot of nickel. And in that case, they either move Tramon Williams into the nickel spot or they move Chandon Sullivan into the nickel. Tramon sort of in his later years became more of a nickel type player, but he started out as an outside corner, so he can play either way. I also have this feeling they Pettin may play around with some kind of a 3 safety look where Tramon Williams is kind of a safety, and he uses Darnell Savage in a way to do some coverage, brings Amos in the box and drops Tramon Williams. I think there'll be a lot of different options there, but I do think it would be a loss if King can't play. He's a big, long guy who, he may not be playing at a Jair Alexander level, but he's reliable, and he's a good matchup for Mike Evans. He's at least got the height. So they would definitely miss him if he's not there.
Let's continue this conversation with a question from Levi over on Facebook. Levi wants to know if Josh Jackson would be active this week if King is out, or have the Packers given up on Josh Jackson? Jackson has only played in 12 games this season. He's only been active, I should say, for 12 games this season. The other games, I believe he was dealing with a concussion for a period of time. Additionally, he's also been a healthy scratch in certain games. Where are the Packers right now as they continue along with Josh Jackson? How are they feeling about him currently?
Well, all you can do is judge by what his active role is, and he's been inactive. I think they've are unhappy with his special teams play, and if you're going to be a backup, you've got to be able to play special teams. And if you can't play special teams, I mean, it says a lot that they brought that kid Russell up from the practice squad for a while for a divisional playoff game ahead of Jackson and Kadar Holman. They had more confidence in a practice squad guy to play special teams. So that just tells you exactly where they're at. They are disappointed in the way they're playing special teams, and they'll fill in the corner position some other way if they have to.
Thanks so much, Levi, for your question. Let's take a question here from Tim over on Facebook. Tim wants to know how kicker Mason Crosby is. Do you think the injury will affect him on Sunday? Crosby injured his left shoulder against the Rams this past weekend on an extra point attempt when punter J.K. Scott, the snap was botched. J.K. Scott pitched it back to Crosby, and Crosby, unfortunately, was kind of hit awkwardly and hurt his shoulder. Crosby has been a limited participant in practice all week. However, he has been removed from the injury report. Listen, he's a kicker. He uses his legs to kick. However, he also uses the momentum of his body. How might that little nagging shoulder injury impact his ability to kick well on Sunday?
I wouldn't rule it out. I think he's the kind of guy who will get it to a place where he feels confident he can kick from anywhere. But who knows? It starts to tighten up during a game, or if he has to make a tackle on a kickoff. It's something to keep an eye on. I think he'll be okay to kick field goals, but maybe it costs him a couple of yards. I don't know. That's something we'll see. It's just really something that never should have happened.
We'll continue with the injury report type questions. It's Friday after all. Pretty important to discuss. Jim over on YouTube wants to know if we have any update on running back AJ Dillon's status. Dillon left the game early against the Rams in the fourth quarter, and with a quad injury, he did not return. However, there wasn't a whole lot of time left in the game at that point. Dillon has been a limited participant in practice throughout the week. He looks like he's been moving around fine, and he's been removed from the final injury report. How many snaps or even touches do you anticipate AJ Dillon getting this weekend?
I think he's good to go for whatever. I don't see any limitations on him. I mean, you saw him in practice. I didn't make it up for practice this week, but from what you were saying, he looked like he was running just fine. And the fact they took him off the list, I think he had a bruise, a Charlie horse, whatever you want to call it. And, they worked on it. And I would expect him to be as close to 100% as you could be.
Thank you, Jim, for your question. Matthew over on Facebook wants to know, will defensive tackle Damon Snacks Harrison play more in this game? Harrison only had 3 snaps this past week against the Rams, which was down from his total the week before, week 17, against the Chicago Bears. How likely is it that defensive coordinator Mike Pettin wants to use Harrison more this upcoming weekend against the Buccaneers?
I don't know. He seems to want more pass rush, and he's been getting more out of Dean Lowry over the past couple of weeks. You don't always see it in the numbers, but Lowry has been getting more push than he had in the first 3 quarters of the season. Lancaster as well. They do miss Kingsley Keke. I think that's a guy that they are definitely missing right now. I think it's a transition for Snacks Harrison. I think they play their techniques different than he did, and he's still kind of learning it. But I still think maybe on some short yardage situations they'll use him. For whatever reason, they didn't feel like he fit the game plan against the Rams. Maybe that changes this week.
Thank you, Matthew, for your question. Let's go to Curtis on Facebook. Curtis wants to know, can Packers fans expect the pass rush to get home? I believe a stunt-style blitz will get home. The Tampa Bay offensive line isn't good enough to stop them. The Packers were only able to get 4 quarterback hits on Brady in week 6. They weren't able to get him down on the ground a single time. How likely is it that they can do a little bit of a better job, mix in some different types of blitzes more this upcoming weekend?
Well, you have to be really careful with Brady. I mean, you do have to blitz him at some point, but he gets the ball out quickly. And if you're blitzing and he knows where it's coming from, he's going to dice you up and you'll never get there. And so then it doesn't pay to blitz. You have to really be really smart with it. Now, the old New York Jets teams that Pettin was a coordinator for, they found ways to get after him and really bother him. But you have to have that kind of a team. And the Packers are not just an all-out blitzing team. They like to play coverage. They like to be a little bit more bend but don't break. So I think we will see some corner blitzes and, inside linebacker blitzes, and you'll see some stunts, but I don't think you want to make a living doing that against Brady because he's so good at getting the ball out quickly and throwing in rhythm.
Thank you, Curtis, for your question. Let's go back to Levi on Facebook. Levi wants to know what tight end Dominique Dafney brings that the Packers like so much. Levi says that he's shocked that tight end Jay Sternberger can't get active for the game. Sternberger was inactive last week. He has been dealing with a concussion. He was in concussion protocol for a few weeks. However, he was back and practicing last week, and the Packers decided to not have him active for the game against the Rams. Instead, Dominique Dafney was active, and he ultimately played 20 snaps on offense. Why do they like Dafney so much right now over Sternberger?
Strength. He's a big, strong guy. He's deceptively strong. He's not a tremendously big guy like Mercedes Lewis, but he's really deceptively strong. And so he's pretty good at the line of scrimmage. And then, he's nimble enough that he can play fullback. And he brings more pop than Jay Sternberger would at that fullback position. And really, there isn't a huge need for another pass-catching tight end. What they need is they have Tanyan and they have Mercedes Lewis to do the dirty work, Tanyan to go downfield, and Daphne's kind of the in-between guy who will fill in for Mercedes Lewis when he has to and give Tanyan a blow once in a while. So I think it just comes down to Daphne as a big, strong kid who gives them more in that area than Sternberger does right now.
Dafney is just another undrafted free agent that has found a role for himself in this Packers offense. And I think of someone like Chris Barnes, too, on defense that has contributed significantly to the Packers. It's incredible to me in a year like 2020 when so many pro days and other sorts of things were canceled that undrafted free agents didn't get to put on the show that they necessarily would have want to. So many players slipped through the cracks, and it's remarkable to see some of them have contributions to the Packers this season. So thank you, Levi, for your question. Let's go over to Mike on Facebook. Mike wants to know if tackle Jared Veldheer will be active, and we've already discussed AJ Dillon today, but looking at Veldheer specifically, he is still on COVID-19 reserve. The Packers could potentially activate him tomorrow if he is healthy enough to play, or if he's even just healthy enough in general, but that remains to be seen. If he is healthy enough to go tomorrow, that he's able to be activated off of COVID-19 reserve, how likely is it that the Packers would want him to play at all or just be depth on Sunday?
Well, if he was symptomatic, which we've heard that he was, I can't imagine that he's ready to play this week. I don't know if they've even said whether he's been at the facility at all, whether he's out of quarantine. So I would guess not. I don't think he's going to be available. It's a shame because, they're one injury away from having a big problem at tackle. So they're just going to have to keep their fingers crossed that Rick Wagner holds up and Billy Turner holds up. I mean, they always have that option of moving Elton Jenkins, but you don't want to do that if you can help it, especially with Tampa's big dudes inside.
Thank you, Mike, for your question. Jordan over on Facebook wants to know if the Packers have the answer to that other corner spot in the draft or free agency. Chandon Sullivan is okay at best, and Kevin King has to go with his injury history. Kevin King becomes a free agent in 2021. We'll see if the Packers want to bring him back, given the fact that he does have an injury history. How early might the Packers address cornerback in this upcoming draft?
Wow, it's so early. I really haven't looked at the draft all that much to see what the strength of the draft is yet. They will have to draft a corner. I mean, you should draft a corner every draft. It's just a good idea because corners are really hard to find. And so, yeah, I think they could draft a corner. I don't know what will happen with Kevin King. Maybe he finds a market that's really depleted and he comes back on a one-year deal that's very cap friendly. I would, if I'm Gutekunst, I would take him back. Absolutely. He's a veteran guy and he's going to miss some games because of injury, but he's still quality, experienced corner, and those guys don't grow on trees.
Finally, thank you, Jordan. Finally, we'll Take a comment here from Tommy. Tommy says that Tramon Williams has the game-winning pick six. Tramon Williams has been known to have some big plays in his Packers career, specifically looking back at that 2010 season and their playoff run to the Super Bowl. Is it possible? We'll see. We'll see if Williams is A, elevated from the practice squad to the active roster for game day, and B, if he plays at all. But the Packers brought him on for a reason, and if King isn't healthy enough to play, Williams is certainly there to provide insurance.
Yeah, they didn't bring him in to be a starter. They brought him in, I think, because of his locker room presence, his experience, and because they felt like they could use another body in the secondary. I think because the reasons we talked about with Josh Jackson and Kadar Holman, they're not playing special teams the way the Packers need them. And so why not bring a guy in who you feel really good about, can play corner if you need him. But I wouldn't expect him to be a big part of Sunday. If he is, I'll be really surprised.
You're raining on Tommy's parade, Tom. But anyway, we appreciate the comment so much.
In the past. Just go back and watch that 2010 game in Atlanta on NFL Game Pass. You'll be okay.
Good advice from Tom to another Tommy. Thanks, everyone, so much for joining us. We really appreciate it. We'll be back on Sunday to get you set for the game. Me and Pete Doherty will be live 90 minutes before the game, so make sure you come back to Packers News, Facebook, Periscope, and YouTube to chat with us once again. For Tom Silverstein, I am Olivia Reiner. We will see you next time.